Big news coming out of Impact Wrestling's television tapings after Sacrifice in Louisville, Kentucky. Plus, an Impact Wrestling star does confirm their departure from the company. All this and more in today's Impact Wrestling news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of Impact Wrestling today. And obviously, we're going to talk about the spoilers coming out of the latest set of Impact Wrestling television tapings in Louisville, Kentucky after Sacrifice. So spoilers ahead. We are going to get into some nitty-gritty stuff here. And also, like I always say, usually I'm not really one for wanting to cover spoilers and all that kind of stuff, but the way that Impact Wrestling television tapes and the way that it kind of blocks out over time, it's kind of conducive that you have to cover it as it happens, and then you cover it again once it airs on television, because once it airs on television, you can see different context, you can see different storyline beats, you can see things that weren't actually or didn't happen at the tapings as well when it comes to pre-tapes and vignettes, etc. So we'll talk about both, so don't worry, but as I mentioned, spoilers ahead, so I'll give you 5 seconds or so to click off the video if you don't want to be spoiled. 5, 4, 3, that's 2, 3, 2, 1. Let's get into the first story, and that is the reunion of the Motor City Machine Guns. Of course, we saw Alex Shelley back in Impact Wrestling this past weekend at Sacrifice when he faced off against Jay White in arguably the match of the night of the Sacrifice event, and Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin are back together in Impact Wrestling. Now, there is a segment during the television tapings in which the leader of the Bullet Club, Switchblade Jay White, called out Alex Shelley for a too sweet, basically saying, I'm inviting you to come into the Bullet Club to join me with the Good Brothers and Chris Bay. Shelley then hit the stage for a verbal exchange between the two, but then was joined by Chris Sabin to set up the Motor City Machine Guns versus a Bullet Club team of Chris Bay and Jay White later on in the show, which of course they did have that match later on in the show. I won't say who the winners and losers were, but the Motor City Machine Guns are back together, which is great news. I mean, I said before, I wasn't sure when that Alex Shelley announcement was made a few weeks ago that he was going to be at Sacrifice. I wasn't sure whether it was going to be a situation where it was a one-off and he could just come back in for the match against Jay White. Of course, they've got a ton of history. I think Alex Shelley helped train Jay White and they know each other very well. It's a dream match. They've only faced each other, I think, once before during, I think it was Jay White's New Japan Pro Wrestling debut. So not only do they have the history of the training, they haven't really faced that off that many times and all that kind of stuff. It was just a big match for Impact Wrestling to promote. So I thought, at the time, I don't know if Alex Shelley's coming back more permanently to Impact Wrestling Television. What's the situation there? Because, of course, previously, he returned to Impact at Slammiversary in 2020 with Chris Sabin as the mystery team to answer the Rascals. It was open challenge at Slammiversary then. And then they stuck around for a period of time, won the Impact Tag Team Championships, etc. And they were meant to be part of that big match against then AEW World Champion Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers at Hard to Kill. And it was going to be them teaming up with then Impact World Champion Rich Swann. Of course, at the time, with the pandemic being what it was, and what it still is, but what it definitely was at the time, Alex Shelley has his outside job as a frontline care worker, and there was obviously the vaccination situation being rolled out at the time. So his vaccination status had changed and his job had told him that he wasn't able to go to places where people weren't being vaccinated and all that kind of stuff. That was the situation essentially. And because of that, he had to stop working with Impact Wrestling for a while. He could take specific outside independent dates, but he had to be more picky and choosy and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, he does come back. He came back to Impact at Sacrifice, but again, I wasn't sure at the time if it was going to be leading to a longer thing, because at the time, and I'm assuming this is probably still the same now, at the time when he was working with Impact, when he was tag team champion, etc., he was on a per appearance deal, which I'm 99% sure he's probably on the same situation now. Still on a per appearance deal. But he's back, looked to be for the foreseeable future in Impact. He's back teaming with Chris Sabin. And I think that's the right thing. Chris Sabin's been doing some good stuff. In the meantime, of course, he's been part of this Ring of Honor, Honor No More and Impact storyline and flying the flag for Impact Wrestling and all that kind of stuff. But his best work, of course, is with Alex Shelley in the tag team situation. And frankly, definitely when Alex Shelley had to leave, the tag team division got really light in Impact, and I'm not sure they've been able to actually fully restock the shelves, as it were, since then. I mean, they had the North, of course, they went. You had the Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley went, so you didn't have the guns anymore. For a while, you had Finn Juice that were there, of course, and they were feuding with the Good Brothers over the tag team championships, but of course, they went back to New Japan, and we don't really know their situation. I think Juice Robinson's contract with New Japan has expired, but we don't really know that situation there. We know that David Finlay was apparently interested in coming to Impact, but we haven't really heard much more about that. So the tag team division was relatively light. You know, you had Violent by Design, you had the Good Brothers. That was kind of it, you know, and for a brief period you had W. Morrissey and Moose, but they were always going to be two singles guys that were going to split up, and that's what happened. So they're needed. They're obviously needed, not just because of their quality, but they're needed just for tag teams going forward. So I don't know really what they're going to be doing in terms of feuds. I mean, one would assume if they're feuding with the Bullet Club, that would mean that they're probably going to be involved in this, you know, a feud with the Good Brothers, but of course the Good Brothers just dropped the tag team championships to Violent by Design, so I don't know if we're going to get maybe a triple threat scenario where it's Violent by Design versus Good Brothers versus Motor City Machine Guns. I don't know if the Motor City Machine Guns are going to be involved in this multiverse of matches match with the Good Brothers versus the Briscoes during WrestleMania weekend. That's definitely a possibility. I think the idea, certainly from what I'm perceiving here, the idea I think is that they want to, you know, have these matches at multiverse of matches that are just like they're crazy. You'd never think that they would be possible to happen. So Good Brothers versus Briscoes versus Motor City Machine Guns. That's interesting. That's very interesting. And I think that maybe is the direction that they might be going in with the Motor City Machine Guns. Nevertheless, it's great to have Alex Shelley back. It really is. Speaking of people it's great to have back, Josh Alexander, of course, is back with Impact Wrestling, signed a multi-year deal with the company, returned at Sacrifice. He's going to be facing Moose for the Impact World Championship at the upcoming Rebellion pay-per-view in April. Now, Josh Alexander actually opened the television tapings. It came out for a promo, but he was interrupted and eventually jumped by Honor No More, with Team Impact making the save. This then led to a match later on in the tapings where he faced off against Matt Taven. So it would appear that in the build-up to this feud with Moose, or this match with Moose, rather, at Rebellion for the Impact World Championship, he's still going to be involved in this Team Impact versus Honor No More storyline for now. Like I said before, the Honor No More situation is interesting because it came out of Ring of Honor closing or going on hiatus last year, and these people being released and all that kind of stuff, and it made sense, and it did feel like, you know, these outside Ring of Honor guys were invading and all that kind of stuff, but the mentality, or certainly the context, has changed slightly with Tony Khan's purchase of Ring of Honor, and I feel like they need to almost kind of pivot in a different direction and go to something different, because we know the situation, the status of Ring of Honor now. These are guys that were left out in the cold and the company sort of closed down and all that kind of stuff, and that's true and that is fair, and I guess maybe their convictions haven't changed as much, but the context has changed with Tony Khan's purchase of the company, so I think that's interesting. I mean, again, when it comes to the spoilers for this television tapings, we only know so much, so it could be a situation of, whilst he was attacked by Honor No More, when he faced Matt Taven later on in the show, that kind of wraps it up, because as we get closer to Rebellion, I don't really want Josh Alexander to be too focused with Honor No More. He should be focused surely on Moose and the Impact World Championship and that match that he's going to have. Frankly, I feel that it's very, very, very likely that he wins the championship at Rebellion, because if he doesn't, if Moose defeats Josh Alexander at Rebellion, not that there's no coming back from that, because of course there is, but what other story are you trying to tell, right? To me, there doesn't seem really any other story to be told in that situation there, I think, because you have Josh Alexander pursued the championship, or had this great X Division championship reign, really made a name for himself, cashed that in, for lack of a better term, option C, defeats Christian Cage at Bound for Glory. Just seconds later, Moose cashes in the Call Your Shot gauntlet, wins the title. Josh Alexander, then his contract expires. He's sent home by Impact Wrestling officials. This is all in kayfabe, of course, but sent home by Impact Wrestling officials. Can't even work in the United States. Re-signs of Impact, comes back. The ending to this story is Josh Alexander winning the World Championship. If he signs a new deal and comes back just to lose, that's a massive booking faux pas, in my opinion. So it feels inevitable that Josh Alexander is going to win. And maybe that's why they're having this continuation of him feuding with Honor No More, one, to sort of tie up those loose ends of that storyline, but also to place an element of doubt of what if Honor No More gets involved? We know Moose was a Ring of Honor guy. What if Moose becomes the new leader? We know Eddie Edwards is technically the leader right now after he turned his back, but Moose has remained largely indifferent to all of this, right? I mean, you had Heath come out too, I guess, and question him and say, we're being invaded by these Ring of Honor wrestlers and you're doing nothing. Why are you doing nothing? Maybe that's where this is all going. Maybe the direction of all of this is that actually Moose was the one, after all, that was pulling all of the strings. He's the one that got these ROH guys to come in. And he's the one that convinced Eddie Edwards to turn his back. And actually, Eddie Edwards isn't the president, he's the vice president, if you will. Maybe that's the situation there. And maybe that all ties up. But if that's the way the storyline's going, again, Moose then should win. But what does that do for Josh Alexander? Nothing. So it's a bit of a curious booking situation there. But Josh Alexander, of course, is back with Impact Wrestling. One person that's back, another person's gone, is Jake Something. We spoke the other day about Jake Something leaving Impact Wrestling, and Jake Something has confirmed his departure from the company. He took to Twitter yesterday to announce that he is officially a free agent. Of course, this comes after his loss to Impact X Division champion Trey McGow at Saturday Sacrifice event. He said, quote, "I am officially a free agent, so here is my official statement on the subject. I'm just getting started," he wrote. Jake thanked Impact Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore and the company in a follow-up tweet. He said, quote, "Thank you to Impact Wrestling and Scott D'Amore for taking the chance on me and helping me learn and grow so much. Much love to the entire locker room, a true family." Now, it was reported back in mid-January that Something was expected to become a free agent as his contract was expiring at the end of February unless a new deal was reached. His deal reportedly was up on February 28th, but he had one outstanding date, and that was Sacrifice. Jake, of course, did not work Sunday's Impact television tapings. It was reported after Sacrifice that Jake ended his Impact run on good terms and will likely be welcomed back in the future if the opportunity is there. It was also noted that this departure does not necessarily mean the end of two sides working together if they can reach an agreement in the future. So, as we spoke about before, I won't go over it too much because the video's out there when we spoke about it, but I really do think he'll get a lot of offers. I do. I think that WWE will look at him and say that's exactly the kind of person we want nowadays. I think AEW would certainly look at him and go, man, that guy's a horse. They've got some big guys on that roster. Whether it's Wardlow, Powerhouse Hobbs, Keith Lee, they're all in that ladder match. They've got some big guys on that roster. And I think Jake Something would fit in there very well too. I believe his partner is Ruby Soho as well. Not that that means anything, but you never know. Certainly opens the door conversation. I'm sure he's been backstage at a couple of AEW television tapings too. You also have to look at the Ring of Honor perspective, right? Tony Khan might look at Jake Something and say, maybe we don't put him in AEW right now, but we can put him in Ring of Honor. That door's completely open now. That's a completely other thing. So that would be looking something to look out for too. And also, as the report says, if Impact Wrestling, I would assume if they see the interest, if they say, I'll tell you what, actually, WWE and AEW are putting together some really intense packages for Jake Something, maybe we do that as well. So I wouldn't rule it out, but Jake Something has confirmed that he has departed Impact Wrestling and is now officially a free agent. A couple other things from the Impact Wrestling television tapings in Louisville. We know that Ace Austin is the new number one contender for the X Division Championship. He won a three-way qualifier to face X Division champion Trey McGow at Rebellion, and now McGow was on commentary for the match. We don't know if it's just going to be a singles match. I mean, let's face it, Ace Austin, Trey McGow, sign me up. That is a classic X Division title match. The X Division title was kind of, and this is what's great about it, is it's a bit of a chameleon, isn't it? It can evolve and it can change. You can have people going after the belt like Jake Something, and when Jake Something, if he had won that match, but when he's going after the title, the X Division Championship feels more of an Intercontinental United States TNT Championship. It's more of a mid-card title, not a Cruiserweight Championship or anything like that. And Josh Alexander was a great example of this. It was a television championship, mid-card title that can help elevate those who hold it into the main event scene. Obviously, when you have smaller guys and more high-flying guys in there, like Trey McGow or like an Ace Austin, it just feel more sort of light heavyweight, cruiserweight championship. And that's not a knock at all, because that's the great thing about the X Division Championship. It is no limits. And I think that's the most compelling thing about it, is that it can move and it can evolve and it can change depending on the holder. And it's, like I said, it's a bit of a chameleon. It adapts to the champion that holds it. And I think that's fascinating. So Ace Austin versus Trey McGow at Rebellion. If it's just one-on-one, what a great match that's going to be. Ace Austin's a curious one, because I felt that at the beginning of last year, when he won the Super X Cup and all that kind of stuff, he was really building to something and he was really on fire. Remember, this is a guy that was in the main event of Slammiversary 2020 in that fatal 5-way match for the vacant vacant World Championship. And if he'd won it at the time, he would have become the youngest champion in company history. Of course, that didn't happen, and I believe his record, that's impossible now. He's older than Tessa Blanchard, but I think that I feel like his growth has maybe been somewhat stifled. I feel like he's just a tremendous wrestler. I think he's got a great look, and maybe he needs another X Division Championship reign just to get himself back going, because I do think that's a guy that should be in the main event scene. I mean, look, if maybe he wins the X Division Championship, and then in the future you get Josh Alexander, Ace Austin, World Championship, that's money. Or even if it's Trey McGow keeps it, Josh Alexander, Trey McGow, that's money too. So there are some big matches there that I'd be very excited about. Finally, we saw another return, actually, at the television tapings. That's Larry D. Now, you might be saying, wait a minute, Owen, you were just saying a couple of weeks ago that Larry D has left Impact. What's going on there? Well, Larry D is actually from Louisville, Kentucky, so I'm assuming he just appeared as, probably Impact Wrestling called him and said, look, we know you left and, you requested your release and all that kind of stuff, but you're from Louisville, you're local, you get a pop from the crowd, wrestle a match. And that's what he did. He wrestled a match and was involved there, but I don't think he signed a new contract with Impact Wrestling or anything like that. I think he's just local to the Louisville area, and as he mentioned, he left on really good terms with Impact Wrestling, so that's the situation there. But let me know your thoughts on today's Impact Wrestling news in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestling News 365, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.